It's the shock, like, how can this be happening to my family? And all of us are normal families. We're not like criminal enterprises or anything like that. And all of the members that come, all in the same boat, like, how on earth is this happening in my family?
Emotionally, it is really gut-wrenching and scary and very intimidating to go visit him.
What's being taken away from you is your freedom, but what should not be taken away from you are your human rights.
That's been the thrust of my life now, is to fight for that human right of healthcare.
We're a group of strong women, strong, resilient women, and we take care of one another.
Thank you, Marge and Farhat, for joining. I appreciate you taking the time to talk about this. To start off, Farhat, can you tell us a little bit about the Moms organization and how you got involved in it?
Sure. Well, this was early in 2010. I was going to John Howard Society and knew a crisis worker there. And he was in touch with other moms like me, and there was a community worker who was our a liaison between us moms, and all came together at John Howard Society and met there for the first time. And so there were three of us, plus the crisis worker from John Howard Society and our mentor, Lorraine, who brought us all together. We started to meet in January of 2011, and we used to meet physically in person, and slowly we got to, spread the word. We put our posters at John Howard as well as the detention center with the phone tear off. And so that's how we started to get members. And soon we were meeting regularly at John Howard Society.
Okay, and what is the original members, some of the first people that were connected together? Can you explain a little bit about why you were being connected with these other people, and why the John Howard Society was trying to make those
Right.
connections?
Well, John Howard Society is a very old organization that has always, helped and facilitated services for people who are incarcerated. So through them, when especially when my son became incarcerated, that was the agency that I approached. And just like the other moms, we went there looking for assistance for not only for ourselves, our information, getting more information, but finding other people who are also involved. So this is how we came together, the three moms. At least the two other ones, they met at the detention center. They were both there to see their sons and met. And it was that original member, I won't name her right now, but she was instrumental with this idea of forming a support group because of the trauma and the shock. She realized there's two of us, so why, I'm sure there is more other women like us. So she was also in touch with the crisis counselor at John Howard. And so he put us in touch with each other, and we came together. And so the objective was really to meet other people going through the same crisis that we were going through. And it just, there was nothing like it before. And so this really resonated with people who saw the ad on the wall at the detention center and called hesitatingly at first, but then once they joined and came to the meeting or talked to one of the original members, they felt that here was somewhere where they could come together and get the help that they need and be able to talk about what they were going through because there was no other outlet for them. And
Right.
so
And so it
moms
started.
provided that.
Yeah, so moms provided a support outlet for mothers of primarily children who were being arrested, have had been
Yes,
incarcerated,
that's right.
and it stands for mothers offering mutual support, right?
Right.
So,
Yes,
um, so okay, so you were one of the first three members,
that's
and what
right.
about you, Marge? How did you find yourself getting connected to the moms
Well, I
organization?
got connected a few years later. I started in the beginning of 2013, and I found my way there through the John Howard Society. I had contacted them, and they had suggested the group. So my son was had been charged a few months before, and he was on bail with me. I was the surety, and that's how I first got involved with them because, as everyone will tell you, nobody knows anything about the criminal justice system and how to proceed through it. It's very opaque, and so I just wanted some information. And so our support group really has three objectives, and that is to support people, to educate, that is, tell them what you have to do if you're in a remand center, if you're going to provincial, if you're going to federal, and also advocate. So our group also advocates for more humane conditions in jails and prisons.
Right. Well, yeah, it's definitely great that that organization came to be because I can't even imagine what
Mm.
that's like to have a family member or somebody you know going through the criminal justice system, and it would be a brand new thing, a shock to your system, and you're
Absolutely.
not sure where to turn. And so now that you have this organization, you can turn to other people that have been through similar situations and get a bit of guidance. And yeah, it's truly amazing, and that amazing that both of you are kind of leading the charge in a lot of ways for the organization going forward. I want to get into how the whole incarceration situation with your sons has affected them, how it's affected you, and what it's like in a Canadian carceral facility, and what some of the things that could be done to improve the facilities are. But before that, we dive too deep into that, I think it'd be good to hear a little bit about who your sons are and who they are to you. And so, if you don't mind sharing just a little bit, Farhat, about uh, who is your son and what was he like growing up, and maybe were some of your favorite memories together.
Thank you for asking that because as I have always said, that my son was a very normal young Canadian boy. He was born here, 19 early 1971, and he grew up just like any other Canadian. He played hockey. He liked soccer, and he had a head for numbers. And in primary school or middle school, his teacher remarked how well he wrote. He said, only every 3 or 4 years do we see a student who has such command of the language and can write so well. So I've never forgotten that. And he had a head for figures, and he would remember, try and memorize what the tallest buildings in the world are. So very normal childhood. And when he became a little older, he started to focus on where he wants to go to study for his university and such. And it wasn't until his later teens that he just sort of seemed to have just dropped off to from this trajectory of moving forward to something that just shocked us, finding out that he wasn't going to school, or he was going to school and staying in the library, not going to the class because he felt uncomfortable there. And and his behavior changed from a messy kid to a spotlessly clean room. And he was, so this was new to us, and he started to miss school because he slept in. And of course parents chalked this up to laziness, and behavioral problems and things like that. So we tried to admonish him, and try to help him, to overcome these things. But he he continued to have those mental health issues. So his teens and young adulthood, for me, was spent in trying to get him help, psychiatric help. I put him in the program at the Royal Ottawa here, and tried to help him get over those. And he struggled, but he continued to fight very hard to get his education and some training and all that. And as he is in prison, he continues to strive to learn. There are obstacles in his path, as we will get to see how the conditions of confinement can be so challenging. But he struggles, and he still continued to learn right through his incarceration, and has accomplished a lot, learning many languages, and continuing to better his prospects for employment, which our conversations mostly are about that, what he will do when he is paroled or when he is comes out of jail. So his love of learning and wanting to be a productive citizen hasn't diminished.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like he was a very passionate learner when he was growing up, and he still is. And a lot of what you describe about his childhood is, yeah, fairly typical. Enjoys sports, goes through school. Unfortunately, there's issues with mental illness. What specifically was he battling with in terms of mental illness?
Well, like I told you before, that we had no knowledge of what mental illness in that age can be. We did not, we chalked it up to just, being distracted with the teenage um, uh, uh, interests and not wanting to study. But that was very, it wasn't helping. And so I did take him to the uh, psychiatrist, and tried to get him help, but nothing worked. And so uh, it was. It was puzzling, really, what was going on for the longest period of time. And until we moved to Ottawa. There is a big gap in there when we moved to Ottawa, and I took him to the hospital here under a research program that they monitored him. And but he was never diagnosed with anything specific. It was I who had come across some literature about obsessive compulsive disorder, and this was in Ottawa, but I went to his doctor and showed him that material, and that's how we determined that. But there was also the cyclical depression, that he was suffering from. And all the psychiatrists or the doctors we saw, nobody ever diagnosed him with anything. It was the obsessive compulsive disorder, which was obvious to us to see that he would wash and take long for showers and everything, but he never um, he wasn't diagnosed with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder, which would come much later when he was arrested and imprisoned, and things got worse in the mental health area. So he was diagnosed later.
Okay, so he's eventually diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, but early on there were signs of depression and obsessive compulsive
Yes,
disorder.
yes,
And yeah, I imagine it's very difficult to get an official diagnosis, especially already it's difficult enough at that age. You're a teenager, you're changing so much, and there's a lot of new different things on your plate. But okay, yeah, thanks for sharing that, Farhad, and we'll jump back into that and explore more with your son and how he's doing now and what that whole process has been like. But for you, Marge, what about your son? Has what was he like growing up, and what are some memories that you have?
Well, like for Farhat, he grew up in a very normal family and he was the normal kid. He loved sports. He was in hockey all through his young childhood and up until he was 18. He played soccer. He was a real outdoor kid. I think the main thing that really affected him was that when he was 14, his father, my husband, died. And that was a huge impact, as you can imagine. He was very close to his
Mm-hmm.
father. They did a lot of things together. And while that is not, I'm not using that as an excuse for what happened, but it certainly is one of the reasons that things went the way they did for him. As a teenager, he had a job every year since he was 14. He got his first job, and then he worked all through high school in the summers on a golf course, working on the greens, which meant he had to get up very early. He had long days, but he liked that kind of work. And so he's always worked right up until the time he was incarcerated. So what I noticed with him is towards his later teens and early 20s, he started to get in with a bad crowd. And that crowd sort of pulled him away from the positive influences in his life that had been going on up to that time. So he was unusual as somebody who's incarcerated, in that he had both graduated from high school and he was fully employed right up to the time he was incarcerated. So that's not the typical scenario for someone who is incarcerated. They say about 75% of incarcerated people have not completed high school. So I'm a retired educator, and one of the reasons is that there's a lot of kids who slipped through the cracks in high school, and there can be that whole pipeline from lack of education right into substance abuse and criminality. Such was not the case with my son, but yeah, so that's eventually these. Uh, Contacts that he had that were less than positive that sort of enticed him into some criminality along the way.
Right. Yeah, I think it's really important to hear the background stories, because it's easy to hear the result of what somebody has done and where they are now, and think, well, I'm nothing like that person. That would never happen to
Mm.
me. But when you hear a lot of these stories, you realize that these are people very similar in a lot of ways. You're just going through life, and in particular, in both your cases, it's around the high school period, things start to become a little bit more turbulent. Marge, for your son, very difficult. I imagine going through the loss of his
Hmm.
father, and how that might affect somebody. And I've heard that the majority, or a very high percent at least, of people that end up incarcerated have some form of mental illness. And I think if most of us are being real, there's so many moments in our life that, had we not had this certain support groups, or had we not had, um, just things go our way, maybe just luck went our way, we were able to overcome certain challenges. If we didn't have things go our way in certain moments in our life, we may have taken a different
Mhm.
path. And I think it's worthwhile to hear these stories and try to think about, well, how are they different from me? And were there moments in my life when I was facing a very big challenge, and had I not had a support, had I not had something fortunate go my way, I might have ended up on a
Mhm.
different path. And I think that sometimes when I see, even just walking down the street, you see homeless people, you never know what kind of unfortunate thing happened to them. Yeah, there's been times where I've struggled with mental health in one way or another, and if things didn't end up the way they were, they could have went sideways and very negatively. But all in all, thank you for sharing that, Farhat and
Mhm.
Marge, and I think that lays a good framework for what the complexity and depth that this situation truly is,
Right.
and why it's had such a big impact on both of you. Obviously, these are your sons, and you love them, and there's something that they did that you hate. And I think people could relate to that as well, where maybe not on as intense of a level necessarily, but just somebody you love doing something you hate, and now you see them suffering because of it. And it's obviously you're going to be torn emotionally in all sorts of directions. And
I
I want to
just
get into that. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead for it.
I just wanted to say that, we have, Moms has about over 160 members now. And when they first come and tell their stories, and Marge, if not 100%, 99% of the women will tell you this story. This is how their story started, is with the mental health challenges. It could be bipolar disorder, it could be addictions, it could be learning disabilities, or by other forms of mental illnesses. And that's where the system failed them. They couldn't get treatment long enough or effective enough so that they would be addressed, and that it ended up in criminality. So this is a refrain we hear from everyone. And they're not just our sons. Some women, it's their partners or their boyfriend or their brother. And so it can be any member of the family. And you're right in thinking that it could be anyone. It could be anyone that this could happen to.
Yeah, we're quite
Yeah, absolutely.
aware that there's a mental health issue that often leads to substance abuse, and then that leads to criminality. So that's quite a pipeline that goes along there. And certainly, a lot of it is because of the lack of mental health care that there is out there, especially for young people, older teenagers, and that really desperately need that help and are not able to get it.
Right. And so what is the mental health care been like for you, Farhat? Well, for your son as he's gone through this process, and can you outline a little bit of what that's been like for him
Yeah.
from being arrested to where he is now?
Yes. So when they first get arrested, and after the assessment, they are placed into what's called a remand center, which is the um, uh, Ottawa Correctional
Carlton.
Carlton Detention Center. Sorry. And it can take very long for them to determine, that period remand. Moms feel that that is the most dangerous for our sons and our family members, because that's when they haven't been really convicted of anything. There's just a charge, but the court system takes so long for them that they're very vulnerable at that time, because they're a local services that they relied on get cut off from them. Also, the psychiatric or psychological help they were getting as part of a family, they were getting that's cut off, and they're very vulnerable. And then the court delays can further exacerbate their mental health. And that's what happened in my son's case. He was terrorized, and this was in 2001, and the 9/11 happened then, and that had a huge impact on our lives as Muslims and on my son's life. So he was terrorized by other inmates as well as guards. We know that there are racist guards and 25 years ago that I'm talking about, things were not very good. And so he became so ill that he was determined not unfit to stand trial. This was in 2004, after 4 years of incarceration, and the judge ruled that he should not be kept at the hospital and not sent back to a detention center. That's how sick he got, and so he was there for 5 years, and there is no psychiatric help in the Remand Center. It's just very, very difficult situations. There's segregation. There is all kinds of punitive actions that take place when they are awaiting trial.
And
So that
Farhat,
was the 5 years. Sorry.
can you just detail a little bit about what led to being placed in the remand facility? I know you were sharing about your son. He started to develop mental health challenges,
Right.
obsessive compulsive disorder, and depression,
Yes.
and so he was dealing with that, and later to be diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder.
But
Just
that
to
was
give
after he was charged. But
right,
yeah. So uh, he had been struggling to get ahead, and he was working as well as going to school. Um, and uh, so this is it's a longer story, and that it just keeps bringing me back to the what happened. And um, he was became very good friends with this person who was his friend and mentor for over 10 years, and had gotten him married to his sister in Lebanon. So he was struggling to make ends meet and be able to sponsor a wife. He wasn't, didn't do that, and he kept getting more and more agitated. And then it was his friend that was he attacked, and who died later, and that's why he was in jail, at prison. So he was kept there for quite a few months, and back into the Royal Ottawa and back into the detention center. And eventually he pleaded guilty and then was sentenced to life in prison,
right, okay.
second degree murder.
Okay. Yeah, and I can imagine it's difficult to kind of go back and reprocess that whole situation, Farhat. So thank you for sharing that. I just think it gives a better context as to what why he was in remand and later to be in prison. And so he had a altercation with a friend of his, and it went the way that it did, and so then he ends up in remand, which is the pretrial detention center, where they're
Yes,
trying to determine whether he's guilty or not.
yes,
And you're saying in this facility, he loses access to, is it health benefits and,
yes.
and all that? So,
So what was happening was that when I knew that he was there because of his mental illness, and this act that had happened, that was a big determinant his mental health was a big determinant. And I was appealing and writing and talking to the lawyer, thinking that he would be declared not criminally responsible because of his mental health. But that did not happen. And this is why things took so long. There were many assessments, and he was got um, he pleaded guilty. So, which once you plead guilty, then you are just sentenced. Then you don't get a trial, and that's what he pleaded and got. And he was being considerate of the family because they had lost a very dear and very valuable member of their family. He was a father, he was a husband and a son. So, and he was feeling great remorse. So we went ahead and pleaded guilty, and he started to serve his life sentence.
Wow. Yeah. And imagine, yeah, there's massive shockwaves through everybody affected. And obviously there's the primary victim of it, but of course you can think of how this is going to affect everybody else as well, and how challenging it might be, and there's so much healing and support required, and I want to get into that later on, just talking about restorative justice and all that, but yeah, so far, what was the treatment like at the Ottawa Carleton Detention Center? Was there? I think I had read, or maybe had mentioned on our previous call. Was there a was there a period that he went through of isolation? For some reason, the word's slipping my mind here, but solitary confinement. Was that at the OCDC, or was that later on?
That was then as well, because he would be put into segregation frequently, either as punishment or as, just to, it was mostly punitive. So, he would be put into that. I've forgotten most of the details since then. I've got notebooks that I've written in, so I'm sure that's what transpired. And he was very afraid for himself because of the threats. He would think that we were in danger, and he would tell me to, move somewhere or change locks on my house. So those kind of treatments continued when he was sentenced and went to the penitentiary in Kingston.
So
And
this
that's where he was put into solitary confinement.
and so this, like, kind of paranoia behavior, wondering about putting locks on and worrying about things like that, is this when you were starting to see a lot more signs of the schizoaffective disorder?
Yes,
Was
but
like
yeah,
right prior and right after the incident? And if what is schizoaffective disorder, just to give people a better idea of
I really
what that
couldn't
is?
tell you. It is when the reality, the person loses touch with the reality, it's out of touch with reality. They
Right.
may hear voices, or they may, talk to people that are not there. My son apparently that's what was happening when they determined that he was not fit to stand trial.
Is it right that he was in pretrial detention for 4 years? Is that the timeline? So there was
Well,
a very
almost 5 years,
almost five
from
years. Wow.
February 28th to 2001 to November of 2005.
So and the length of time, was that essentially because they were assessing his mental condition, and obviously saw signs that this person is struggling with mental illness, and they're trying to determine
That's right.
whether it was
Yeah, in the
not fit
beginning,
to.
yes, that's what it was. I remember he had two. Usually there's a 30-day assessment, and his went on for 60 days. They extended it, and if memory serves, that's what happened, and he got another assessment. And yes, so
And do
the
they still
NCR wasn't an option.
right? And do they still use solitary confinement on a like frequent, or is it still a method that is used at the detention center? And what kind of effect did this have on your son? Did you notice how that changed him? I can only imagine someone already struggling with mental illness and
Yes.
then being sent to solitary confinement. How long was he in there, and what effect did that have on him?
Well, it was periodic when he was at the detention center, and you've heard that the solitary confinement has now been outlawed in Canada, and
Okay.
but the assumption is, and the fact is that there are still pockets of incarceration where people are experiencing the solitary confinement, and so they are left on their own devices for a long period of time. So that's a big subject, and there was a panel, the advisory panel, that was put on to implement the change in legislation that was banning the solitary confinement regime in Canada. And their final report did say that there were still pockets of solitary confinement being practiced within Canada's prisons. So the provincial as well as the federal prisons, they're not supposed to put people in solitary confinement.
Okay, yeah, because it probably just it has no positive effect, right? Like it's
No.
you get put in there,
Yes.
and even someone who's not struggling with mental illness, you might start to develop some mental difficulties. I mean, it's similar to torturing somebody. Essentially, you put them all there by themselves. So, how did you notice an effect on your son
Well,
when he after he would come out of solitary confinement?
Well, it wasn't like I wasn't observing him and,
Right.
very closely, but I was advocating for him even then. And if you see those letters that I would write to the psychiatrists, to the warden in the jail, to the lawyer when he had the lawyers fighting for him, to say that, to give them the background of his mental health problems and his depression and all the rest of it, to say that he, was should be considered NCR, but that didn't happen. But at the detention center, you said that what effect it had on him. It was the conditions of confinement were so adverse and so horrific. And it was, like I said, 9/11. So then the Muslim men in prison were being discriminated against and taunted and viewed with suspicion. So if my son also is observant of his religion, so he was being um, taunted and mistreated because of that. And I could go into examples and stuff, but that's just, more detail. And I saw the effect that it had on him when there was a hearing. I went to that hearing. There was a jury as well, and of 12 people that ruled him unfit to stand trial. Now, that didn't happen in a vacuum. That happened under very adverse and punitive circumstances in the prison. So it is a
Right.
testimony to our system that, when there is mental health issues involved, that there needs to be the minimum of a therapeutic environment for them to get better and not for them to get worse.
Right, and I think that that should be the overall goal is that people go in and in the name Correction Services Canada, it's a correction. It should be targeted at that, and maybe that is the intent. But it sounds like there's a lot of unnecessary punishment along the way that will make it less likely for someone to have their behavior corrected. And
That's what
um,
moms are advocating for. And Marge will testify as well that we've written letters to the provincial as well as federal governments, highlighting these issues and these incidents that we experience, and informing them that they need to put more resources into the healthcare of people that come in with these challenges, the mental health challenges, the addictions, or the learning disabilities and others, that they need to pay attention to that. And but unfortunately, it's the security and safety of the institution agendas that trump the care and the treatment of our mentally ill family members.
right, yeah, and I saw a figure as high as 70%
Yes.
of prisoners are either substance abuse or mental illness. And so if it's that common and it's the treatment in there is that bad, it's not
Mhm.
leading to much corrections. As the document you shared with me, Marge, for the Office of the
Mm-hmm.
Correctional Investigator, the individual responsible to review and determine what's going on in the Correction Service Canada facilities. One of the main thing I noted there is that he says that they're not fit to deal with severe mental
Yeah.
illness, and that they need to improve that because they're trying to tackle it, but it'd be better served by a specialist, like a local mental facility, rather than doing it in house because people are not getting the treatment that they need for those mental illnesses. So for you, Marge, what was the? Can you detail the story for your son? Like what led to the arrest, and what has the process been like for him being
Well,
incarcerated?
my son's process was very different from that of Farhat's son. He was eventually arrested with this little group of his that he was part of for various property crimes. So he was taken into the detention center. Now, when you go into a remand center, they have the option of releasing you on a promise to appear later, or they can hold you for a bail hearing. So, despite what most people think these days, most people are held for bail hearings, and bail is not always that easy to get. Like from what you hear in the media, you'd think that bail is almost automatic. Well, it is not, and it's getting harder and harder for people to get bail. However, this was over 10 years ago. And what happened was he was held overnight for a bail hearing. And because the crime was not committed in the Ottawa area, he was taken back to the municipality where the crime occurred, which meant that then you're transported in a vehicle back for a court date. So anyway, he was held for a bail hearing, and when you're held for bail, you have to have a plan of what you're going to do when you are on bail. And in Ontario, that mostly involves having a surety. So a surety is someone who promises that they will report you if you breach any of your bail conditions. So I was going to be my son's surety, and he was going to come back and live with me. So basically, we had to have a plan of what was going to happen. And I was called up on the stand to testify and say, okay, my son is going to be living with me. I will enforce his conditions, which normally the normal conditions you can expect are curfews, uh, often sometimes staying in the house, usually no access to alcohol or drugs, and obviously no guns. So anyway, his conditions that he was given were essentially that he was supposed to be in the house with me. However, correction systems are really want to see people working. So he was able to work during his entire bail time, which was about 8 months. So that 8 month period of time, he was able to work and stayed with me. But I was on promise that if he did not follow his bail conditions, that I would have to report him. So anyway, that's what happened. So Farhat's son had to stay there in the remand center. He did not get bail. My son was able to get bail, and he's been very successful since. And I kind of wonder if he had to stay that 7 months in the remand center, whether that would have had the same result. Now, Farhat didn't mention this, but if you're not held in isolation, you are bunked in. And currently at OCDC, most people are triple bunked. So that means there's two people in the bunks, and there's one person that lies on the floor. And the toilet is at one end, and they're given, I guess, a mattress or something to lie on the floor. So you can kind of think about it. So there's three people in a cell, three grown men in a cell, and some of them may be detoxing, and they're not really given much help with that. So you can imagine sort of like the irritation and how dealing with two other people that you never met in your life before, and you have no idea what they're like. So anyway, it's tough if you are in a remand center. The other thing is the food is very poor. There's very little to do, and our members now are always telling us how many lockdowns there are. So lockdowns mean that people get out of their cell very little. They're supposed to have time in the yard. They're supposed to have at least 20 minutes in the yard per day. Often they don't get that if there's a lockdown. And right now, most of the lockdowns seem to be occurring because there's lack of staff. It's not because there's any incidents have been happening in the jail. It's because of lack of staff. So anyway, my son was lucky enough that he did get bail, and so he was home with me, able to work during that period of time. So that was a huge bonus for him.
Right. Yeah. I think it's really helpful to hear some firsthand accounts because, like you said at the start there, with bail, sometimes you do hear different messages in the media. You hear, "Oh, everyone's getting out on bail. It's very easy." There's different political factions saying one thing or the other, and sometimes it's hard to make sense of what's truly happening. So he gets bunked in, or he gets sent to Remand. At what age is this when,
Early 20s.
he goes in? Early 20s. Okay. So yeah, it's difficult time for a lot of young people. And I mean, even, you get tied up with certain peer groups and unfortunate things can happen. But, so he ends up in Remand, and how small is this room that has a triple bunk? Like, is it,
Well,
because I'm just picturing something
it
quite
is quite
small, and I'd
small.
imagine, yeah, and like you said, had maybe your son not gotten out of remand as soon as he did, maybe his he would not have been as successful, because I guess these conditions are so harsh and so difficult that even the most resilient and mentally strong person is likely going to start to deteriorate when they're in a tiny room with triple
Yeah.
bunked and poor food, and you only get 20 minutes of sunlight a day. And I get it. People might say, well, what's supposed to be done? I mean, these people have done a criminal incident, and so there's a punishment associated. But if this is the case, that part of his success is that he moved on to a facility that treats him better, and he ended up getting out and being more successful because of that. That should be what society should be targeting, I would think. And so those conditions are not correcting and not rehabilitating, which is what you want the
Well,
system to
just keep
do.
in mind when you're in remand, you have not been convicted of anything.
Right.
So you've
Okay. Yeah.
just been charged.
Right. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
even yeah. So a lot of those people will leave there and be determined by the courts to be
exactly.
innocent, right? And so they spent however
Yeah,
long in those conditions. And um, is there any what happens to those people? Do those people just they leave and the system says, "Oh, sorry, we thought you were criminally liable, but you're not." So anyway, have a nice
exactly.
day, and they
Pretty
just send you on.
much. Pretty
Okay.
much. Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah,
much,
that's right.
yes.
Now, for those people who are found guilty, if they have spent their time that's spent in remand, I think they get, do they get 1 day off their sentence for each day in remand? It depends. It can be a day or a day and a half. And in some cases more, especially if a judge finds that the conditions that they've been held in have been extremely harsh. So they are given time, that amount of time off their sentence. So if they're sentenced to, say, 3 years and they've spent 8 months in remand, that 8 months, their sentence is reduced by that much, usually.
Oh, okay.
It
Okay.
depends on the judge, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And also about remand is we know for a fact that if the young person or any person has been put in remand and their hearing is 7 months from hence, sometimes they can't last that long. It just discourages them so much. And if they're suicidal, if they have come in with mental health issues, then this is when most of the deaths in custody occur. And that did happen to one of our members.
One of our members had
It was
a,
a 19-year-old.
yeah, 19-year-old son committed suicide. It was not in OCDC, but it was in a remand center.
wow, yeah, that's brutal. I mean,
Yeah, and a very
yeah,
talented young man, so talented. And the mother is, how can the mother allow, how can she continue her life? It's been such a challenge for her. We've been having a memorial and a celebration of life or whatever, to just you know, to encourage her to just be and continue living. She has another son, and it's devastating. And if people would see that and think about those things, they wouldn't be, saying, "Oh, bail is too lenient," or "Don't put these people on bail." Those are the people that those are the kind of stories nobody hears. It's just that these some of the people with the some ideological agendas, they want our sons to stay and die in jail, and that's not on for us.
This
no, yeah,
this
and
particular young man had been bullied and threatened during the time that he was in jail, and the thought that he was going to have to spend even more time in there was more than he could bear.
yeah, I mean that'd be. I can see based on what you're describing how that'd be unbearable. You're in a tiny room with two other people that potentially are abusing you, and you're stuck there, and this is all prior to even being determined
Yeah.
guilty or innocent, and which is yeah
Exactly.
one of the most unfortunate things is that yeah they send you there, and you're saying this is it's far harsher in remand than even once you get to the facility. There's just is it because there's too many
Well,
people you think, or they just don't have the
it's partly
resources?
the overcrowding for sure. That has a huge amount to do with it. But there simply aren't things to do. Like there's not programming there for people to do.
Right.
There some people can get a job sort of a job as a cleaner or something like that, but those jobs are sort of few and far between. The short time my son was in there, he said he tried to spend most of his time sleeping. That's, just to keep away from everything. Now, the people in those cells don't stay in the cells all the time. There is a common room where they go into, where they're in whatever range they're in. So they're in a range with other people, and they, again, within the facility. But these can be dangerous places too, because there's quite a variety of people in there, and sometimes people feel actually safer in their cell than they do when they're on in the common areas. And then, as I was saying before, they are supposed to get it's written in that they are supposed to have a minimum of 20 minutes per day outside. So there's an outside area where they can sort of walk around in that. But there's very little to do. So it's the boredom that gets you as well.
Just eats away at you.
I mean, they do have a TV in there, but usually there's somebody who controls the TV and what they watch and all the rest of it. So.
Okay. Yeah, and there might be fights over what channel should be played, or who knows. That's an awful tragedy, especially so young at 19. Just knowing that as you're developing, it just, you don't have the maybe emotional regulation, understanding of what's going on. You fall into the wrong peer group, whatever it may be. And your brain is also just not fully developed either. And I think for men in particular, it takes a little longer, like 27, 28, before you're fully developed all those executive functions and are able to make better decisions. So yeah, that's quite brutal. But your son, Marge, how long did he stay there? And then what was his path after that? Where did he go? He was
only there a few days. So he got out on bail. Then he had his court date. Now, he ended up doing a plea deal, so he pled guilty to some of the charges. And that happened about 8 months after he was initially charged. And so at that point, he went back into the facility for that court date. So he was there overnight. Then he was sentenced, and he was allowed to come back home for a period of time after sentencing. And then he went in at a certain date where he went back into OCDC, and then he stayed there until he was transferred to Joyceville. And Joyceville is the assessment center if you're going into federal prison. So I think he was maybe there for about maybe a week and a half, and then he was transported to Joyceville. And that's the assessment center where you go, where they determine what your programming you should take when you're in federal. It also decides what level of security you're going to need, whether it's maximum, medium, or minimum. And you're usually in that facility for 6 to 9 weeks where they do those assessments. And then you are sent to your home institution, which in his case was Collins Bay in Kingston. He was lucky enough to go to a minimum security prison, which the confinement is much, much less harsh and much more open than it is if you're going to a medium or a maximum facility. And the good thing about minimum also is that because if you happen to have an incident when you're in minimum, then you get thrown up to medium, and nobody wants that. So it's a fairly safe facility usually, and people want to do well there because they don't want to go into a higher security facility.
So, what are some of the correction services that take place at that minimum security prison? Like, what's his day to day life look
Well,
like?
first of all, you can get a job there. I think you're paid $6 a day or something for working. But anyway, he was lucky enough to get an outdoor job, so he did yard maintenance. He did in the winter. He did snow removal, stuff like that, which is was right up his alley anyway. So he was quite happy with that. Usually, in the mornings are dedicated to programming. Now, there are a series of programs that you're mandated to take. These are things about being pro-social. For people that need it, it might be anti-aggression training. All kinds of different programs are available. And these programs must be completed before you are eligible for parole. So in my son's case, he was sentenced to a little over 3 years. So what happens in a federal system is that you are eligible for early release after you serve 1/3 of your sentence if you have completed your programming. Now, one of the issues with programming is that sometimes the inmates have to wait quite a period of time before they actually get that programming. So it's whether the programming is offered at the facility they're at in a timely manner. And some people have to wait quite a while for that programming. So anyway, a typical day would be after you get up and have your breakfast, then you go to your programming, and then the rest of the day, whatever job you have, then you work at that job. You also have access to exercise equipment, and in a minimum facility, there's outdoor areas where you can pretty much go when you want to. Like, and in a minimum facility, you are not locked in your cell.
Okay.
You can
At any
no,
moment, there's
and I
like,
mean, unless there
okay.
happened to be a lockdown because of violence, but that's very, very rare in a minimum facility. The other thing is that the inmates have they have their own cooking facilities, and so what my son did with the rest of the guys, what they most do is they sort of order this different kinds of food from the canteen, and then they get together and they cook together communally and that kind of thing. So all of those are very pro-social things. So these are the kinds of things that need to be more available to many more inmates than there are. So again, as I say, you have access to exercise facilities. There's general camaraderie among the men, playing board games, playing cards, this kind of thing. So that can go on. The thing about it is that Corrections Canada, their stated goal is to rehabilitate people. And what's happening when you go into a facility, you go there as punishment, not for punishment. So what's being taken away from you is your freedom, but what should not be taken away from you are your human rights, health care, decent living facilities, food, all of that kind of thing. And so what happens, although many correctional systems purport to support rehabilitation, in fact, what they do is they crush people. And some people come out as broken individuals that then have to be supported by social programs. So this is the whole thing, is that people forget that prison is taking away your freedom, and that is what you're giving up. You give up your freedom. You're not supposed to be giving up all your other human rights. And Canada has signed on to the Mandela rules, which are very specific about what kind of conditions that prisoners should be kept in. Is that, they should be given respect and good living conditions, not subjected to violence and overcrowding and lack of programming and so forth.
Yeah, I can imagine how that would be totally crushing if, like, staying in the Remand Center or even other medium maximum security facilities. And you're completely right that, yeah, the target should be to correct the behaviors, correct the situation, and provide rehabilitation, and not abuse. And in Farhat's case with her son, there's some racial
Yes,
discrimination and all of this. That's not. There's no need to add that on top of the punishment that is your
exactly.
freedom has been taken away. In the minimum security prison, did your son have his own room, or he's sharing it?
He started off sharing and with one other person, but as time went on, he eventually got his own room.
Okay, yeah. So you take that
Hmm.
situation, compared to Remand, you've got your, later on, at least, your own room. You're not locked in. Freedom to go out in the yard, get exercise, get sunlight, just normal human
Exactly,
things that everybody kind of
exactly.
needs. And anybody, really, anybody listening to this or whatever it may be, if you just go weeks without leaving your house, and you don't ever see the sun, and you don't get any exercise, I mean, everyone's going to start to deteriorate and start
Yeah,
to crumble.
that's right.
So you take people that are already struggling, or that they've been broken in one way or another, or at least they're yeah, they're having challenges, whatever they may be, and then you put them into an extremely challenging scenario. What are the odds that they make it out
Exactly.
there better than when they went in?
Yeah.
So, um, what's it like compared in like, so there's kind of an escalating strictness from minimum, medium, and
Right.
maximum. So once what for Farha, what is your son? Which level is your son in?
My son was, for the most part, he was at the maximum security Kingston Penitentiary, and then when that closed down, he was moved to Millhaven, which is uh, also maximum security. But he's always been at the Regional Treatment Center, which is nursing and psychiatric help is available there.
Okay,
So he's been there, but the it's not a therapeutic environment because it is still maximum security. He was still in his cell 22 hours a day and let out very infrequently to get his. At first, it was uh, the food is brought to them and there very little movement on their part. But then he was in 2015 moved to the Bath Institution, which is a medium security, and there it was a sea change for him, and he quite thrived when he first went there. But then the adverse conditions and the the prolonged incarceration with no temporary absences out continued to uh, have the mental health effect that they do, and he would was in and out of it was like a roller coaster going from maximum RTC Millhaven and back to Bath. And for a while last year, he was put into a medium intensity unit, which means that he had more freedom to do his own things. Like he would go and buy his own canteen or go and get his own medication. So that went on, but then he decompensated. Uh, I don't know what the causes was for those are determined as, but he was. The current situation is that he's just in Millhaven, which is a maximum security, and in my communications and applications for um, him to be moved to a psychiatric facility and out of prison. I always argue that it's not going to change if we don't move him into a therapeutic environment. So yes, he's stayed in the maximum security for long periods of time.
Right. And locked in the cell for 22 hours a
Right, and a
day.
very risk averse system. You know, they realize that he has a mental health issue, but uh, the that only translates into prolonged incarceration. Having a mental
Mm.
health problem and a illness, as in his case, does not facilitate your going on parole. He has been denied parole. He's denied any kind of temporary absence that he has asked for, to go to a halfway house even for a day or for a few hours. That's always been refused. So I don't know what the end point of his incarceration and punishment is, but that's a reality.
So what does his day to day look like? What does he do for those
Well, when
amount of hours
he
he's
is
locked?
well and he's cogent and he has his personal effects with him, he studies, he corresponds with the people, and uh, you know, he has some relationships outside, so he would, you know, habitually, monthly or weekly phone calls that he makes. He would call me quite frequently and we talk, and these are therapy sessions really. When he calls me and I can encourage him and I can put some positive, and for the most part, he has remained positive, but his, the paranoia sometimes returns, and so he sees there's a lot of negative fallout from that
Yeah.
situation.
Have you, just over the years, how have you noticed he's changed from prior to getting incarcerated?
Well, they talk about people getting institutionalized. You'd have to look up the description of what that is, but that's I see those signs, this longing to be in a place that doesn't have bars, and longing to be able to eat the kind of food that he can prepare for himself and eat it, some of his ethnic foods that he remembers from home, that he can eat that, and to enjoy uh, somebody's company. Those things are all lacking for him, but he has shown great resilience, I would say, and continued to, interact with other correctional officers and his psychiatrist. And that is also a roller coaster. Sometimes he gets very um, fed up, I would say, or gets tired of keeping up, and then he would resist the medications. He would resist that, and then he gets into the bad books of the correctional officers. Then he's moved back to the more punitive Millhaven RTC, but he seems to come around. Uh, Weeks, months in that sort of dejected time mind frame of mind, and then he bounces back. But these days, it just seems to get longer for him to return. So I'm hoping that it's not a hopelessness that has crept into his thinking, and that he keeps that hope alive that I would see when talking to him. And because he always talks about uh, what he would want to do, whether he would want to be a translator, an interpreter, or a computer mechanic, computer technician. So he always, to me, always seems optimistic, but it doesn't seem to be going very positively at the current time.
Right. Yeah, and that's I mean, it takes a lot of strength to maintain that optimism for that long. How long has he been incarcerated? Mind reminding me the
Well,
duration?
he's serving a life sentence, so,
So
and that's coming up to 25 years in February.
okay, wow, 25 years. Yeah, that's a long, long time, and a lot
It's
of
a
alone time
lifetime.
just locked away in a cell. And so, what does he think about all of this? Like, I know obviously he's struggling with mental illness as well, but just how does he think about what brought him into the incarceration facility, and where he wants to go with his life going forward? Does he share any of that with you? Like, I know you said
Well,
he wants maybe
yes,
translate a certain optimistic vision, and
yeah,
so there's that. But I
absolutely.
just can't imagine sitting, like, just being in the, just so much would be flowing through your mind, and all you have is time just to think.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so how does he reflect on
He
what
I
has
think
happened?
he may have, well, for the crime that he committed, he is very remorseful. He has stated as such in documents that he's prepared for the parole board, and he goes to at length to give his remorse. And to me as well, he has said that he did a bad thing, and that will never happen again. He says that will never happen again. And I hope to, I believe that, and I hope that he does get a chance to prove himself. But the halfway houses that he would be released to do have those mental health facilities and mechanisms that he would be, cared for if he does slip into psychosis. But it's just a very risk averse system that we are facing, and he's facing now, regardless of what he has stated to the parole board. I think it's been 3 times that he has applied and been denied. So, like I told you, I don't know what the end point of Correctional Service Canada is, what designs they have for him, but he seems to not being able to convince them that he is serious about not reoffending, although that was his first offense ever. And he may never uh, do anything like that. And, there has been research for schizophrenia, uh, people suffering from schizophrenia, and how the reoffend rate is really low.
Mhm.
But there is no end in sight. So every day is a day of suffering for him, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, that's brutal. Just the compounding factors of mental illness and such harsh conditions. And I imagine, um, yeah, once schizophrenia is treated, the rates of reoffending
Mhm.
probably go much lower.
Yeah,
And had, when he had committed his original incident, if he was essentially had untreated schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, it's
that's right.
higher
Yes.
likelihood of that. So, what's it like to go visit one of these facilities, Farhat? When you go, you're going to the maximum security facility. What's that like? And yeah, just detail the whole process and emotionally what it's like to go and
Well,
visit your son.
yeah, emotionally, it is really gut wrenching and scary and very intimidating to go visit him, particularly in the maximum security and the facility. When you go there and you present your um, identification, and starting from that, because we as parents, we feel that we are also judged to be the criminals. So there is no niceties that are saved for family members who go to visit their sons or their family members in prison. We feel just as intimidated as if we had committed a crime and we have come to visit somebody who is a criminal. So we are made, very much made to feel that way. There is security that you have to go through. There, you have to go through a drug detections device, and this device, I may add, is has shows many false positives, and so we've been subjected to that. Many of the moms have been subjected to false positives and then being punished for it by not allowing the visit, or allowing the visit but from behind a glass screen and not being able to touch or hug your loved one in there. So, and we moms have spoken up against the ion scanner, as it is called. And we signed a petition, got signatures, and presented to the member parliament. But unfortunately, there was no action taken on that. And people still are tested positive falsely. My daughter and I were tested positive for some drugs, and it's just so sad that they do not take into account the history of the prisoner, to see that, that this person is not likely, so that you'd think
Mm-hmm.
that some of the harsh searching that would go on, you'd think that it's not likely that because he doesn't take drugs. And if it's been 15 or 20 years you've known this prisoner, why would you, then reprimand them and say that you will be passing them drugs, and that, so it isn't individualized. Once there is machine shows you that you may have drugs on you, then you are punished for that. um,
Right.
it's
So yeah, so you're
and
driving sometimes fairly far away, or at least a few
that's right.
hours, and
Two
then
hours,
you,
two and a half hours, and you go there, and you cannot visit your loved one, and that's still happening, as Marge will attest. We still hear that, and it's not just for drugs. Somebody will drive 3 hours, and they will be saying, "Oh, there's a lockdown today, so there's no
mm,
visits." So it is very frustrating, and you cannot complain to anybody because this is continuous.
yeah, wow, that sucks. They have such a faulty machine that, like, is it? It's fairly regularly picking up false positives, and then they send you home and drive back
Yes.
however many hours. Wow. And Marge, is this similar experience to what you've had at when you were visiting your
Well,
son?
the first time I visited him was in the Remand Center when he was there, and that's pretty intimidating. You give your ID, and then you do go through the scanner and so forth. And by the way, just handling money, or maybe if you got gas from your for your car in the way, and you handled that's often where the false
Mm,
positives come. Like money is one of the worst things you can handle, and get a false positive. And so what we've always told our members, go somewhere like McDonald's or Tim Hortons, go in the bathroom, thoroughly wash your hands, wipe down your shoes, maybe have some extra clothing that you like, outer clothing that you put on, just to avoid the ion scanner. So yeah, it's I know. I remember one of our members brought her grandson to see, and they were turned back. And the grandson, who was about 8 or 9 years old, was um, just so upset about the whole situation. But anyway, getting back to my visits. So when you go into a remand center, you're behind glass. You have a little one of those little handsets, and you talk to them that way. and you're allowed 20 minutes. And at the end of your 20 minutes, they just cut you off. So you're allowed two 20-minute visits per week at a remand center. Now, once you go, like at the minimum security facility that my son was in, you go through the same procedures. Like there's an ion scanner, you have to be scanned. I tested positive once during the year period of time that I was going there. And they sometimes will have a dog there that will come and sniff. So sometimes the dog's there, sometimes not. It just depends. So anyway, in minimum, once you go through and you're approved to go in, so they have a common room, and so there might be a number of different visitors in there, each visiting their loved one, and so the loved one is brought in. Now in federal, you can stay for quite a long period of time. You can stay for several hours if you want to. And the place that I went in, they also had toys and books. They had board games, so you could go and play a board game. If a child was brought in, there was toys for them to play with and that kind of thing. And there was also an outdoor area that in good weather, we could go outside and just walk around sort of this little compound, and it had a few chairs and things that you could sit on. So that, and I think you were allowed to go twice a week. So I had about a 2.5 hour drive. So I would usually visit once a week on the weekend. And, as long as you didn't get a hit in the ion scanner, it wasn't too bad.
And how important do you think that was for your son to have these visitations? And is it challenging for him too? I mean, I in any way? I mean, maybe emotionally to have a glimpse of reality and then it disappears after the
Well, I
interaction.
think so. I mean, certainly, I think he appreciated my visits, and he did have a few other people that, like, you can put a list of people that you want on your visitors list, and they can go and visit you.
Oh, okay.
And he did have a few other people that would go and visit him, and so the visits were important. He said actually the weekends were the hardest part at the facility because nothing. It's sort of like like any other institution, is that nothing's going on. Like there's no programming on weekends, the jobs don't go on. Like it was kind of sort of like the nothing to do. But I mean, you could do, of course, physical activity, and he'd get together and some they did have a little track outdoor track in the area where they could run if they wanted to. So there was that kind of thing. But he said that the weekends were the hardest time because during the week they were pretty busy with one thing and another, and the time moved fast. But on the weekends, time was much slower. So yeah.
What has this whole process been like for you, Farhat? And you describe even just the challenges of visiting. You go and they kind of treat you like a criminal by association, and obviously having someone you love go through this situation is so difficult. Like, how has it been over the years for you handling this emotional turbulence, and what role has moms played? In helping you through that?
Well, 25 years is a long time. It's a lifetime, and it has indelibly affected my life, and as well as my family's life. We didn't do the things we set out to think and envision for ourselves in our lives. The trajectories have got us limited into what we do with our lives, because most of my attention has been towards advocating for him, because I believed so strongly that this is the mental health issue. I know he took a life and he did a horrible thing. And yes, he should be as is the rule, to be incarcerated. But his suffering has been more than just incarceration. He has suffered his own torturous mental health conditions. So when he sometimes thinks he's somebody else than he is. So this kind of a case and any all other cases like that should be treated in a mental health facility. And if you are going to restrict and cage them, they should be in a therapeutic environment. And that's been the thrust of my life now, is to fight for that human right of healthcare. The unfortunately, Correction Service Canada runs their own health programs in all these facilities, so they don't get efficient. I won't judge those doctors that are all working there, but they work under very adverse conditions. So there should be more attractive salaries for them, so that qualified people, take those jobs. Most of the time when we do our letter writing, the person we are writing to is in an acting position. These are managers and of in the prison environment, where they so why not have resources spent where that serve the objective of Correctional Service Canada, as you know reintegration and rehabilitation? And when 70% of your incarcerated are suffering from mental health issues, why wouldn't you have more therapeutic ranges in the prisons? So this has consumed us, and this is what the mothers offering mutual support are fighting against. We see how slow progress has been in Canada. I attended a conference yesterday where they are talking about the social and democratic values and structures in in Canada are deteriorating because of the current climate. And
Mm.
so, but we have been fighting for better conditions in prisons since 2 decades now, and we hope that they will be some result, and some positive results we will see in our lifetimes, to see
Yeah.
this risk averse system be more open to therapeutic treatments, and better lives for our family members who are going to come out of prison one day. Not everyone is like my son, serving a life sentence. They will come out, they need to come out whole and be able to contribute to society in a positive way, and not be scarred for life, that they are forever a burden on the system.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that is really a really important point to get home to people who haven't necessarily been directly affected by the corrections facilities and the justice system. Is that I think upwards of 95% of people that go in, they're eventually going to
Mhm.
come out, and we want these people to come out having behaviors corrected, having them better off than when they went in, if that's the whole point of the facility, Correction Services Canada, if that's what it's meant to do, then that's what you want. And these things have a ripple effect on society too. And so when your son is getting abused or treated poorly, it affects you and it affects how you operate in the world. And so people may not be directly affected by this, but it has a ripple effect, and I think they'll be affected in terms of safety and prosperity of society if people are better reintegrated. And so I think what you've done, Farhat and Marge, all the advocacy over the years is incredible, especially on the back of such a emotionally difficult thing, is essentially turning a personal challenge and directing that towards improving the lives of others and advocating for healing. So I think that's yeah, quite an incredible resilience in the spirit that you've put your energy towards. So yeah, thank you for that. And Marge, for you, are there certain specific things with the justice system uh, that you wish could be repaired or
Yeah, well,
improved?
there's a lot of them. I mean, my son ended up serving about a year and a few months, and then he was released on parole. And since then, he has been fully employed. He has a family, he has a house, and he's incorporated a small business recently. So,
Oh, nice.
but none of that is due to the justice system. I mean, he didn't learn any new skills when he was incarcerated. Um, so there needs to be more skills training for people when they're
Mm-hmm.
in a federal because they need, it's difficult enough for people who have been incarcerated to get jobs without them coming out with no skills training. So I mean, if in fact they want to rehabilitate people, there has to be some skills training in there of something that's going to be useful to them when they get out. Um, the other thing is the pettiness of some of the things that happen in the system, like talking about healthcare. So, one member recently reported that her daughter, who was incarcerated, had her glasses smashed by an inmate, and it took 4 months before she had her glasses replaced. I
Wow.
mean, that is ridiculous. I had to fight to get my son contact lenses when he was in assessment in Joyceville. I had to go to the office of the correctional investigator in order to bring him in contact lenses. And, you know, like anyone who knows anything about contact lenses, they're in sealed containers. It's not like you can put some drugs in there or something. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous things like that. So that type of healthcare that everyone else takes for granted, why is that a big deal? And those are very small things. Those are small things compared to many things like Farhat has been talking about, mental health challenges that no one is getting proper therapeutic treatment for. So that is for sure that they have to have more resources allocated if they are truly wanting to rehabilitate people and not let them out worse than when they went in.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, hopefully there's some sort of efficiencies or whatever they can find to get improved resources. I saw that the office of the correctional investigator, he noted that he thinks it's a big waste of money to be building another regional treatment center
Yes.
on the Atlantic,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll
Absolutely.
be 1.3 billion that they're going to spend
Yeah.
on that. And he thinks that's a complete waste and it could be better spent elsewhere. So a lot of it, it seems like there probably is the money, and there probably is the time. I mean, there surely is the time to have people develop skills, have people develop better, different ways of thinking through therapy and so on. That's there. It just seems a matter of execution, having it go through. But I'm sure with yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's unfortunate that things seem to be deteriorating now, but if with continued advocacy and things, definitely there's a world where that could all exist. And so I think keeping pushing forward, I think is
Well,
good.
our unofficial motto is moving mountains one teaspoon at a time.
Right. Nice. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's
That's what
probably
it feels like.
what it takes. But yeah.
Well, Kim Pate has some proposed legislation, and that speaks to exactly these kind of things. Um, and what the OCI, you said, is recommending that resources be put into hospitals where people like my son can be easily transferred to. So for 20 years at least, I've been advocating for my son to be moved out of prison, for him to really get better, to have a whole range of mental health therapies like the CBT and other range of uh, treatments that can only be given in a forensic psychiatric facility where 80% of the staff will be clinical and 20% of the staff may be safety and security. But in these regional treatment centers, it's 80% is security staff. And maybe there are psychiatrists whom, if he's lucky, he gets to see once a month. Then the clinical care team, he may see them once a week. So if he has an issue, and if when we talk on the phone and say, oh, did you ask your clinical caseworker this? He said, no, my appointment is for next week. So he has to wait a week to see that. So there is no ready access to people who are mentally ill in prison. So those are the kind of things that we want to be seen, the resources being spent at. And Kimpe's legislation, the OCI recommendations, and any other oversight bodies and researchers have wonderful ideas, and that would be less costly for correctional services to implement. And that is our hope, that we can continue to advocate for those.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would think some of the potential immediate resistance, some people might say, well, there's facilities outside of prison, healthcare, and so on that are struggling. We don't have
Yeah,
things for your average person. They're struggling to
right.
get appointments and all this. And I would just think multiple things can be done
Sure.
simultaneously, and it's and so
Yeah,
that's not necessarily an excuse to not try to improve
yeah.
the carceral facilities.
It
And
shouldn't be
um,
either or. It should be
Hmm.
everything. Should be. It should not exist. This kind of deficiency in our systems.
yeah,
It shouldn't.
and who do you think? Like, I guess it's the at the end of the day, it stops with the government as like the public safety minister. They're the ones who truly have the power to be directing and
Yes.
deciding where the money goes. Like these are the people that need to be hearing this.
Yes, basically that's
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah, and it's not uncommon for the government to spend money inefficiently, and but in this case, I like to put it in terms of how much like the Canadians on average are spending, and I looked into it, and the Canadians on average per person are spending about $100 a year on Correction Services Canada. And for this treatment facility mentioned on the Atlantic, it's about $30 per person. Um, on average. And yeah, I think it's useful to put it in those terms, just so people realize that when the government's spending money or they're not doing things efficiently, it truly you do have a skin in the game, whether you realize
Hmm.
it or not, and whether it's just you want to improve society, but you technically are paying for these things, and if they're getting wasted, then you're not getting what you paid for. So I think people should point that out. What what do you think could be done for the justice system to improve services for victims? Because sometimes on the uh, from afar, it looks like, okay, well, uh, something has happened to somebody, and what we're going to do is punish the other person, and that seems to be the end of the reparation, the victim healing is, well, we've given punishment to the person who victimized you. Do you think there could be more? What do you think? What do you think on that side of things? What could be done to help the healing process and yeah, for
Well,
victims?
there is something called restorative justice, and some of those programs where the victim and the perpetrator meet and they discuss things. There's some very, very good programs, and sometimes that's very, very powerful. Now, the programs that I'm aware of, they very carefully decide whether that's appropriate depending on who the victim is and who the perpetrator is. But from what I understand, having the victim being able to confront the person that committed a crime against them can be very, very powerful, and in some cases more gives them more closure than simply having the punishment. Now, these systems are kind of in their infancy. They start out small, and we do know a few groups that provide those kinds of in a limited way. But I think that is certainly something that could work for maybe not everybody, but it could work for some people.
Right. To know that the person that committed the offense has come around and is willing to take responsibility and accountability and show apology. Yeah, I could see how that'd be
Yeah.
quite beneficial.
And by the way, in
some
order for
cases.
someone to get parole, when they go in front of a parole board, I mean, part of that is that they have to show that they have taken responsibility for whatever it is they did, and they understand the impact that that had on the victims, and that they have a plan in order to prevent that from happening again when they get out. So that is part of it. But I think perhaps having a victim being able to talk to that person directly and hear exactly what their plan is and maybe what caused the incident in the first place, for some people, I think that could be very powerful.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
There's also
And
the diversion programs. We need to have these restorative justice. They exist and but they're not applied as often.
No.
So if there were more mechanisms put into place, more resources given to these restorative programs, and the diversion, for the indigenous offenders, they are diverted to their through GLADU, I think it is called, that they are diverted to their own systems of justice. So, similarly, there's a collaborative justice program that we are aware of that's out of Ottawa. They're getting more clients now because people are looking at more cases that could go through that, and to unclog the system, that jam that is with cases overload. So those are very much required. And I would also talk about the staff and the personnel who run the prisons. The correctional officers at federal penitentiaries and guards, and it can't be a picnic for them to come to work, given the kind of atmosphere that is. So when we advocate for their health and well-being too, but they have to have more
Mhm.
training. For example, they have to have more training for mental health issues, because when they don't understand the person who's having psychosis, for example, and they will intensify their punitive treatment of that person, it exacerbates the situation and may cause the person to act out and respond negatively. And again, the situation can really derail and become very dangerous that way. And that has happened in our experience as well. So, the training, we have always asked that the correctional staff be trained in mental health issues, and not just a one-off or a small training for hiring, but periodic training, just like they have security training for police and for the guards. So that is essential tools in improving our justice system.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, those jobs are very difficult, I imagine, the correction services officers, but they're the front line, and they need the tools required to improve things. If they don't have that, and they're just kind of going in
Yeah.
and winging it, then it's a recipe for trouble. Um, I wanted to ask both you about what has it been like going through this. Has there been any stigma that you have had to deal with, and what's that been like to overcome? And I definitely want to ask that just because I think some people could probably relate to being stigmatized for one reason or another, not specifically this, but perhaps other things about their identity or who they know, who they're connected to, and I think that yeah, I'd be curious to know how you've dealt with that, how you've handled the stigma, and if you've been able to overcome that, and perhaps it can act as a guideline for other people listening who are dealing with some other sort of stigma. Sorry, yeah, Farhat, if you want to go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, well, if there is one single thing that that shocks us is being looked upon, your community, your family members, your friends, as somebody you are a parent of someone who has committed this horrific crime. And surely the stigma of that is beyond what people can tolerate. So, in our experience, we have seen that they will go to many lengths to hide that fact that this has happened to them. If the person goes absent for a while, people will say, "Oh, my son has gone to his aunt's for 6 months," or something like that, just to,
Mm,
avoid that. And when women first come to our meetings, that they feel so relieved that they are in a place where they're not going to be judged harshly, because everyone has that same stigma attached to them. And so uh, that is we're social beings, and that's what you want to prop yourself up and show that your son or daughter is doing so well in school, and you don't want to divulge any negative thing as horrific as that. Our television screens are full of crime dramas because there is that attraction of that story and that thrill and all that. But reality is far removed from that thrill and that drama. It is a horrific, traumatic, stigma filled situation that occurs. So, how do we learn from that? We either go silent, we don't speak about our problem publicly, even among our family, if we have an extended family, and how there is um, competitiveness in families, saying how well your children are doing in school. And so that is a real shame that we carry within us. So we resort to hiding, we resort to being silent. But I, for one, because I had nothing to lose, what was I going to do if I wasn't going to, speak up about the challenges of the mental health that my son had been through? I chose to spoke up, and it's not a bravado or a very magnanimous on my part to be saying that. It took a lot of it took a lot out to be able to do this, because I had nothing else nothing else was working. My letter writing wasn't working. My phoning my member parliament wasn't working. And the lawyers weren't able to get my son to, be NCR, or for him to be transported to a forensic psychiatric facility that I was trying so hard to bring about. So I was given the opportunity. This our mentor who worked in the field got me to speak to at a city hall. They were talking about the annual report for the city of Ottawa. They were talking about your transportations, your snow removals, your street paving, and all that. And then I got up and I asked about the conditions at the Ottawa Detention Center. And I can assure you that there was silence in the house because nobody had spoken about it. That was my first foray. And then just the fact that people would listen and be aware that this thing exists, because nobody was talking about this. And this is what gives us moms hope, is that at least when people are aware that such a situation is uh, occurring in their communities, in their own societies, that they will be more aware, and then maybe they will speak up, and maybe things will change. So that's the only thing that keeps us going and rising above the shame and the guilt we feel. But it is never far from our thoughts and our consciousness.
Yeah, it definitely takes courage, and thanks Farhat for that. I think not an easy thing to go through, and isn't it true, Farhat? You were awarded something by the
Mhm.
Governor General, basically for your advocacy, for
Well,
your
that
willingness
was
to speak up.
because friends and the moms, the mentor that we have, they collaborated and conspired
Okay.
to nominate
But well
me, and
deserved.
so
Yeah, 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 for sure, absolutely. That's
yeah, that
incredible. I mean,
was
because they only hand that out to, I think it was 12 people a year, so or
yeah,
something like that, or yeah, very
it
very
was
few.
yeah, it was called the Meritorious Service Award. So I'm very grateful for that.
Right? Yeah, it's amazing. And for you, Marge, has it been? How has it been handling the stigma, and even perhaps you could share a little bit about your son as a second hand. How has he been handling that coming out?
I mean, when it first happens, it's the shame, it's the guilt, it's the shock. Like, how can this be happening to my family? And all of us are normal families. We're not like criminal enterprises or anything like that. And all of the members
Mhm.
that come, all in the same boat. Like, how on earth is this happening in my family? So everyone experiences that shock and that shame. And I think that it's made worse because you feel so isolated. It's not like a death in the family where everyone comes and supports you because you have a family member that's died, or some other illness that's in your family. With something like that, people often avoid you.
Mm.
They don't know what to say to you. And but it's funny. Gradually, a transformation occurs that you start to feel stronger about it, and it's sort of a concept that we talk about sometimes: radical acceptance. The time that you're able to face up to that and say, okay, well, this is happening, and somehow we're going to have to get through it, and you accept the fact that this is happening to your family, then things tend to get a little bit better, like then you can start planning, okay, now this is happening in my family. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to handle it? And once you can start doing that, you take back a little bit of control over the helplessness you feel at the situation. And it's remarkable, as we see in our members as they're going through the whole situation, is how the strength and resilience starts to build up in them. And all of a sudden, okay, well, there are things that we can do, and we can help our loved one. And all of us in our group, we do not give up on our loved ones. I mean, even though sometimes they go through a long period where they're not behaving the way we want them to do, but you do. And I mean, I think our group is part of this, is that you gain resilience. You see how other people are dealing with it. And once you start to get information, you know what's going to happen when you go through this. You know what the bail process is. You know what the parole process is. Once you get a little bit of information, you start to gain some power. And I think that's what happens with our groups, is that gradually, I mean, we're a group of strong women, strong, resilient women, and we take care of one another.
Yeah, it's wonderful that you have that group and you've turned an unfortunate situation into a strong group like that shares the resilience to new members. Anybody who comes in, you kind of can give them a guidance and the path, and they can see firsthand that you've overcome some of the stigma and you've been open to talk about it. And it truly is amazing. And so thank you for your efforts, and keep it up. And you're it's inspiring to see someone turn an unfortunate event like that and turn it into what you have with the moms organization. So thank you, Marge, and thank you, Farhat. We'll wrap this up, but I appreciate you joining and taking this time.
And maybe you can share our website. We have a message board on our website for anyone who has somebody, any woman who has somebody involved in the criminal justice system. If you leave a message there for us, we get back to you pretty promptly.
Sounds good. Anybody listening, check out Moms Ottawa, the website, and reach out to them if you need to.
Okay, thank you so much.
So, thank you.